Yes.
Hello, I am Christine Moliner, an anthropologist teaching at OP Jindal University in India. I will discuss today the role of religion in a major social movement that made the headlines in 2020 and 21, namely the Kisan Andolan, the Indian farmers' movement. For 1 year, millions of farmers have mobilized in northern India against 3 farming laws that were aiming at liberalizing and corporatizing Indian agriculture, until the government repelled those laws in December 2021. Being specialized in Punjab and Sikh studies, I got interested in this movement because of its distinctive Sikh flavor, and I have therefore studied the role played by Sikhism as a unique tool of mobilization and a source of inspiration, which will be the focus of my talk today. But what was also striking in the farmers' movement is the contribution of the leftist farmers' unions and the unique blend of Sikhism and Marxism that took place in the farmers' protest, which I will also try to address here. So what will I basically talk about? I'll first briefly introduce you to Sikhism and the Sikhs. But you have had a wonderful lecture by Professor Radhika Chopra about it recently. I will then say a few words about a relatively under-researched field, the study of religion in social movements, before discussing at greater length how Sikhism has provided formidable organizational resources, a shared identity, legitimacy to the struggle, a meaning system with ethical norms and moral values that were seen as threatened by the new agricultural laws, as well as a very rich legacy of motivating icons, heroic figures, narratives of struggle and rituals that greatly inspired the protesters. And lastly, I will briefly address the role played by the leftist unions. So let me start very briefly by introducing you to Sikhs and Sikhism. Sikh, the word Sikh means disciple, and Sikhs are the disciples of a line of 10 gurus, starting in the late 15th century with Guru Nanak and ended in the early 18th century with Guru Gobind Singh. Early Sikhism emerged originally from the Bhakti movement, a form of devotional Hinduism, but the Sikh community has evolved over the century into a separate religious and ethnic group with its own institutions, religious practices and symbols, such as the turban for men, a collective memory, and political aspirations. Sikhs represent a majority of the population in their homeland, the Punjab, but a tiny minority in India, about 2% only of the total population of India. And they are overrepresented abroad among the Indian diaspora. They constitute 10% of the Indian diaspora. Indeed, Sikhs have a long tradition of transnational mobility that started with British colonization and Sikh enlistment in the army. So why have Sikhs been so prominent in the protest? Because Punjab, as a Sikh majority state, was leading the movement before being joined in the later stage by the neighboring state of Haryana and the western part of another very important state, Indian state, the state of Uttar Pradesh. Therefore, we can rightly say that Punjab and the Sikhs have been at the forefront of this protest. Let me now briefly discuss how the study of religion in social movements, the role of religion in social movement, tends to be a rather unresearched field at the crossroad of social movement theory, sociology of religion, and religious studies. So it is definitely under research because social movement theorists have neglected the relevance of religion as a resource, serving to sustain protesters, making their cause respectable, legitimizing their sacrifice, challenging the statu quo, and perceive injustice, as well as imagine a new future. The reason of this relative neglect of the role of religion in social movement is probably related to the prevailing assumption, especially in the European sociology of religion, assumption that religion is primarily a conservative force, a force legitimizing the statu quo, whereas in the US, in the wake of the civil rights movement of the 1960s, research has focused on the disruptive, the defiant, the emancipatory face of religion, and has shown that sacred transcendence can also serve to challenge and overturn social, political, or economic systems. And this is precisely what we are going to encounter today, namely the dissenting, disruptive side of religion. So let me briefly tell you what was the farmers' protest, the Kisan Andolan, about. Why, where, and how did hundreds of thousands, millions of farmers mobilized? What triggered this movement, and where and how did it take place? So basically, 3 ordinances came out in June 2020 during the first wave of COVID, before being passed in Parliament in September of that year. And in very simple terms, what was the aim of those laws? So these farm laws about pricing, there were 3. Pricing, sale of agricultural produce, and storage aimed at removing the safeguards put in place by the Nehruvian state in the 1960s to protect farmers. Traditionally, agriculture in India is indeed regulated and organized by the state, and farmers do not sell to private actors, but to the mandis, state-controlled local markets. The repealed laws would have opened up this sector to the big corporates. This would have primarily impacted the small and marginal farmers, who represent over 80% of the peasantry in India. And they would have had, those marginal and small farmers, a very little bargaining power to deal with corporate actors. The protesters and their leaders also argued that, trapped in a cycle of debt, they would have had to sell their lands to the corporates. So that was the main fear that motivated farmers throughout the protest. So a protest was against those laws, when they were just passed in September 2020, was initially launched from Punjab. It took place in September and October when the laws were passed, but since the central government ignored the demands of the farmers, the main farmers' unions of Punjab launched at the end of November the Delhi Chalo movement, so the march to Delhi. They were stopped by the police at the borders of the capital, and they settled at the 3 protest sites, which you can see on this map. Tikri border at the west of Delhi, Singhu border in the northwest, and Ghazipur in the eastern part of Delhi, where hundreds of thousands of farmers lived for a full year in their trolley. So let me now move to discussing the topic of today's presentation, namely the role played by Sikh institutions and organizations in providing key resources to sustain this movement. One can even argue that the movement itself symbolically started from the multitude of village gurdwara, so Sikh places of worship in Punjab, where farmers assembled and did ardas, which is the Sikh collective prayer, before joining the march to Delhi. Later, it is also from the speaker of the village gurdwara that public announcements were made on a regular basis during the protest to donate cash and ration that would be sent to feed the protesters sitting at the borders. In the initial stage of the movement, when the farmers got together at the Punjab-Haryana border and decided to break the police barricade to try and proceed to the capital, one particular Gurdwara in Ambala district, which is located in the north of Haryana and precisely at the border of Punjab, so one particular Gurdwara has played a very important role. It has been the focal point of the protest locally since the summer. Food was prepared there for the passing protesters. Meetings were held in the Gurdwara itself, and Ardas, the Sikh collective prayer, was recited. This reflects how in Sikh practice the Gurdwara fulfills not only spiritual needs but also material ones. Besides the contribution of Gurdwara, let me mention the role played by Sikh religious figures such as sants who have supported the movement, as well as religious groups such as Nihangs. Nihangs embody the Sikh martial tradition, and they have been camping on a permanent basis at Singhu border, where I was told by the farmers that they provided security against attacks by vigilante groups. So those Sikh religious figures were interestingly a lot more visible in Singhu. One can even argue that Singhu border was showcasing the religious inspiration of the protest, whereas Tikri has been described as mostly inspired by the leftist farmers' union and the leftist ideology. The main Sikh religious institution, namely the SGPC, also called the Sikh Parliament, as well as the Delhi Gurdwara Management Committee, which is the body that manages Delhi Gurdwara, both institutions have provided langar, so they have distributed food to the protesters as soon as the protesters reached the Delhi borders on the 26th of November.